I was standing at my own wedding reception, 7 months pregnant, watching my husband's face drain of color as his mother walked up to the microphone and announced to 200 guests that our marriage was built on a lie. My knees buckled. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers and shattered on the dance floor. And before I could even process what she said, my father-in-law grabbed the microphone from her hands, looked directly at the crowd, and said 4 words that silenced the entire room. My wife is a thief. My name is Sophia Brennan. I'm 31 years old, and on the night this happened, I was supposed to be having the best evening of my life. Instead, I watched my entire world collapse in front of everyone I loved. But the collapse didn't start at my wedding. It started 6 months earlier, the day I realized something was very wrong with my husband. Tyler and I met at a bookstore in Charlotte, North Carolina. I know that sounds like something out of a movie, but it's the truth. I was reaching for a copy of a novel on the top shelf, and he grabbed it first. Instead of handing it to me, he smiled and said, "I'll trade you. You can have the book if you let me buy you coffee." I laughed. I thought it was the cheesiest line I'd ever heard. But something about the way he said it, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, made me say yes. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. Those 2 years were the happiest of my life. Tyler was kind, steady, and honest. At least I thought he was honest. He worked as a project manager at his family's construction company, Davenport and Sons, which his father Frank had built from a small roofing business into one of the biggest residential contractors in the Charlotte metro area. Tyler was proud of that company. He talked about it constantly. How his dad started with 1 truck and a toolbox. How they now had 60 employees and contracts across 3 counties. It was his identity as much as it was his job. We got married in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside the city. Just close friends and family. Tyler cried during his vows. His dad patted him on the back and called him a good man. His mom, Diana, hugged me and whispered, "Welcome to the family, sweetheart." I believed every word. For the first 3 years of marriage, everything felt right. We bought a house in Mint Hill. Nothing fancy, a 3-bedroom with a big backyard and a porch where I'd drink my coffee in the mornings. Tyler left for work early and came home tired but satisfied. We talked about having kids some days. We saved money. We built a life together. Then I got pregnant, and that's when Tyler started to change. At first, it was small things. He'd come home later than usual without explanation. He'd sit in his truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before walking inside. I'd find him staring at his phone in the middle of the night. His face lit by the screen, his jaw tight. When I asked what was wrong, he always said the same thing. Just work stuff. I wanted to believe him. Pregnancy was already making me emotional, and I didn't want to be the kind of wife who read too much into everything. So I let it go, week after week, month after month. But by the time I was 4 months along, the distance between us had become impossible to ignore. He stopped touching my belly when the baby kicked. He stopped asking about doctor's appointments. One night, I woke up at 2 in the morning and found him sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers, his head in his hands. When he heard me come in, he shoved the papers into a folder and stood up fast. "Go back to bed, Sophia." His voice was sharp, almost angry. "What are those?" I asked. "Nothing." There was that word again. Nothing. The same wall, the same distance. I stood in the kitchen in my pajamas, 6 months pregnant, feeling like I was living with a stranger. 2 weeks later, I found something. Tyler had left his laptop open on the counter, and a bank statement was pulled up on the screen. It wasn't our personal account. It was the company account. And the numbers looked wrong. I'm not an accountant, but I worked in hospital administration for years. I know how to read a financial statement. There were transfers I didn't recognize. Large ones, 15,000 here, 22,000 there. Some going to accounts I'd never seen before. I took a photo of the screen with my phone. I didn't know why at the time. Call it instinct. That night, I asked Tyler about it. I tried to be calm. I tried not to accuse him of anything. "I saw the company account on your laptop. Some of the numbers looked off." The look on his face. I'll never forget it. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Pure, raw fear, like I'd caught him doing something that could ruin us both. "Don't look at that," he said. "That's company business. Tyler, we're married. If something is wrong," I said, "don't worry about it." He walked out of the room. End of conversation. After that, he became even more withdrawn. He started sleeping in the guest room. He said it was because he didn't want to disturb me with his late hours, but I knew better. The man I married was disappearing, and I couldn't figure out why. I confided in my best friend, Tamara. She'd been my college roommate and the maid of honor at my wedding. She listened to everything and then asked the question I was too afraid to ask myself. "Sophia, do you think he's having an affair?" The thought had crossed my mind. Of course it had. But something about it didn't fit. Tyler wasn't sneaking around with cologne and new clothes. He wasn't suddenly going to the gym or guarding his phone when texts came in. He looked exhausted, stressed, haunted. Whatever was eating him alive, it didn't look like romance. It looked like dread. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing him. Every day, the gap between us grew wider. I tried everything. I left him notes on the counter. I cooked his favorite meals. I suggested therapy. He declined everything with the same excuse. "I just need time." Time for what? When I was 7 months pregnant, Tyler came home one evening and sat me down on the couch. His hands were shaking. I remember noticing that because Tyler never shook. He was the calmest person I knew. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. My heart started pounding. Here it was. Whatever he'd been hiding was finally coming out. But what he said wasn't what I expected. "I think we should have a bigger wedding celebration." I stared at him. "What?" "We never had a real reception. Just that small thing at the vineyard. I want to do something bigger. For our anniversary. Before the baby comes." I was confused. We had been barely speaking for weeks, and suddenly he wanted to throw a party? "Tyler, we can't afford. My parents offered to pay for it. My mom's already looking at venues." "Diana." Of course. Diana had always wanted us to have a bigger wedding. She'd been disappointed that we kept it small. She was the kind of woman who believed appearances mattered more than anything else. Big house, nice car, perfect family photo on the Christmas card. I didn't want a reception. I wanted my husband back. But Tyler kept pushing. He said it would be good for us. A fresh start. A chance to celebrate before our lives changed forever. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Over the next several weeks, Diana took over completely. She booked a country club in South Charlotte. She ordered flowers, hired a caterer, sent out invitations to over 200 people. I barely had input on any of it. Every time I tried to make a decision, Diana overruled me. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got it handled." Tyler seemed to relax a little during this time. He was still distant, but not as tense. I caught him on the phone with his father a few times, speaking in low voices. Whenever I walked into the room, they stopped talking. I told myself it was about the party, about the surprise. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. The day of the reception arrived. It was a Saturday in late October. The leaves were turning. The country club looked beautiful. White tablecloths, candlelight, a string quartet playing in the corner. Diana had outdone herself, and I hated to admit it, but the room looked stunning. I wore a navy blue maternity dress that Tamara had helped me pick out. I felt enormous and self-conscious, but Tamara told me I looked beautiful. Tyler met me at the entrance in a dark suit. He kissed my cheek. His lips were cold. "You look amazing," he said. "Thank you." I searched his eyes for warmth. I found something else, anxiety. The first 2 hours went smoothly. People ate. People danced. Tyler's business partners shook my hand and congratulated us. Frank pulled me aside early in the evening and hugged me tight. "You're the best thing that ever happened to my son," he said. There was something in his voice. A heaviness I didn't understand. "Are you okay, Frank?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, then he forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Go enjoy your party." Around 9 o'clock, Diana stood up from the head table and walked toward the small stage where the band had been playing. She tapped the microphone. The room began to quiet down. Tyler was standing next to me. I felt his entire body stiffen. "What is she doing?" I whispered. He didn't answer. Diana smiled at the crowd. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Tyler and Sophia. Applause. She waited for it to die down. I wanted to say a few words about my son and his beautiful wife. I relaxed slightly. Just a toast, that's all. But then her smile faded, and her tone shifted. Marriage is about honesty, she said. It's about knowing the person you're standing next to, really knowing them. She paused. The room was completely quiet now, and I think it's time everyone here learned the truth about this marriage. My blood went cold. Tyler stepped forward. Mom, don't. Diana ignored him. She looked directly at me. Sophia, did you know that your husband has been hiding something from you for over 6 months? 200 people stared at me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. He's been lying to you, Diana continued. About the company, about money, about everything. Tyler's face was white. Mom, stop. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said. I'm protecting this family. The whispers started. People shifting in their seats. Phone screens lighting up beneath tables. The string quartet had stopped playing. I looked at Tyler. What is she talking about? Before he could answer, a chair scraped loudly across the floor at the back of the room. Frank stood up. His face was red. His hands were clenched at his sides. He walked towards the stage with purpose. Every step deliberate. Every eye in the room followed him. Diana saw him coming. Frank, sit down. He didn't sit down. He walked right up to her. For a moment they stood face to face. Then Frank reached over and took the microphone from her hand. Not gently. He turned to the crowd. His voice was steady, but his eyes were burning. My wife is a thief. The room erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Someone near the back dropped a glass. Diana's face twisted into something between fury and fear. Frank, how dare you? Sit down, Diana. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. She sat. Frank looked at me, then at Tyler, then back at the crowd. 6 months ago, my son discovered that approximately $340,000 had been siphoned from our company, Davenport and Sons. He paused to let that number land. It landed hard. The money was transferred in small amounts over the course of 2 years to accounts that were not authorized by any officer of the company. Tyler closed his eyes. Frank continued. My son came to me privately. He was devastated. We hired a forensic accountant to trace the transfers. Every single one led back to the same person. He turned and looked at Diana, my wife. The silence in that room was unlike anything I've ever experienced. 200 people, and you could hear the candles flickering. Diana stood up. That is a lie. Frank pulled a manila envelope from inside his jacket. I have the auditor's report right here. Timestamp transfers, account records, bank confirmations. $342,000, Diana. Where did it go? She didn't answer. I was shaking my hands, my legs, my whole body. I looked at Tyler, and everything suddenly made sense. The late nights, the papers at the kitchen table, the fear in his eyes when I saw the bank statement, the distance, the silence, all of it. You knew, I whispered to him. Tyler opened his eyes. They were red. Yes, for 6 months, yes. And you didn't tell me. His voice cracked. I was trying to fix it before it blew up. I thought if I could recover the money quietly, nobody would have to know. Not you, not the employees, not our clients. But why push me away? Why shut me out? Because my mother told me to. The words hung in the air. Diana's plan became clear, and it was worse than I imagined. Tyler explained everything right there, in front of everyone. He didn't hold back anymore. When Tyler first discovered the missing funds, he confronted Diana privately. She broke down crying. She told him she'd made terrible mistakes. She said she'd gotten involved in a real estate investment that went bad and borrowed from the company to cover her losses, intending to pay it all back before anyone noticed. Tyler believed her. He was her son. He wanted to believe her. She begged him not to tell Frank. She said it would destroy the marriage, destroy the company's reputation. She promised she would help him fix it quietly. But instead of helping, she began manipulating. Over the following weeks, Diana convinced Tyler that the investigation could go public at any moment. She told him that if it did, the fallout would destroy not just the company but his personal life too. She said clients would sue, Partners would pull out. The local news would pick it up. And she told me the stress would hurt you and the baby, Tyler said, looking at me. She said the best thing I could do was keep you at a distance, protect you from it. She even suggested we separate temporarily. I felt sick. She wanted you to divorce me? Tyler shook his head. She's never said divorce. She said space. But every time I tried to come back to you, she'd call with some new crisis. Some new problem. Another transfer she'd found. Another lie to cover. Frank stepped in. I didn't know any of this until 3 weeks ago. Tyler finally came to me because the situation had gotten out of control. When I looked at the evidence myself, I realized Diana hadn't borrowed money for a bad investment. She'd been stealing systematically for 2 years. Diana's face was stone. Where did the money go? Someone in the crowd called out. Frank didn't flinch. She was funding her sister's failing business in Savannah, a boutique hotel that's been hemorrhaging money for years. She was also making payments on a property in Hilton Head that she purchased in her own name, without my knowledge. The gasps came in waves. I looked at Diana, this woman who had hugged me at my wedding, who whispered, "Welcome to the family," who chose flowers for this reception and sent out 200 invitations. She had been stealing from her own family's company, manipulating her own son, and trying to push me out of my marriage. All to keep her secrets buried. You planned this reception, I said. My voice was quiet, but steady. You organized everything. 200 people. Why? Diana didn't answer. Frank did. Because she was planning to use tonight to turn the narrative. She was going to publicly accuse Tyler of financial mismanagement. Paint him as the one who lost the money. She wanted witnesses. She wanted everyone to believe her version before the truth came out. Tyler nodded. Dad found out 2 days ago. She'd already prepared a speech blaming me. I looked at the microphone in Frank's hand. I looked at Diana, who had started this evening by trying to expose her own son, and I understood. She hadn't grabbed that microphone to protect anyone. She'd grabbed it to save herself. But Frank got there first. The room was chaos after that. People were standing, talking. Some were leaving. A few of Tyler's business partners were huddled near the bar, already on their phones. Diana sat alone at the head table, not moving, not speaking. I needed air. I walked outside onto the patio, and the October night hit my face. Cool. Sharp. I leaned against the railing and tried to breathe. My baby kicked hard, like she could feel everything I was feeling. Tyler followed me out a minute later. Sophia. I didn't turn around. I know you're angry, he said. Angry doesn't even begin to cover it. He stood beside me. Not too close. He knew better. I should have told you. From the very beginning. I should have sat you down and said, here's what's happening. Here's what I found. Here's what we need to do together. But instead, I let my mother get in my head. I let her convince me that silence was protection. It wasn't protection, Tyler. It was isolation. Do you understand the difference? He was quiet for a moment. I do now. I spent 6 months thinking you didn't love me anymore. I spent 6 months wondering what I did wrong. I cried in the shower so you wouldn't hear me. I called Tamara at midnight because I had no one else to talk to. I thought about whether I'd have to raise this baby alone. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, not yet. We stood there for a long time. The music had stopped inside. Cars were starting in the parking lot. The party was over in every sense. Finally, Tyler spoke again. What do you want me to do? I turned and looked at him. Really looked at him. Past the suit and the red eyes and the guilt. I looked for the man who handed me a book in a bookstore and asked me for coffee with a terrible pickup line. He was still there. Buried under months of lies and fear and bad decisions, but still there. I want the truth, I said. All of it. Everything. No more protecting me from things I have a right to know. No more letting your mother decide what's best for my marriage. Done, and I want her held accountable. Tyler's jaw tightened. Dad already contacted the attorney. They're filing charges. Criminal charges? Embezzlement. Fraud. Whatever the auditor's report supports. I let that sink in. Diana Davenport, the woman who picked napkin colors and ordered a 3-tier cake for tonight's reception, was going to face criminal prosecution for stealing from her own family's company. "And I want therapy," I said. "For both of us. Not optional. I'll call someone Monday." I looked back out at the parking lot, taillights disappearing down the road. "I'm not saying I forgive you," I told him. "I'm saying I'm willing to try. But if you ever shut me out again, if you ever choose someone else's advice over honesty with me, I will leave, and I won't come back." Tyler nodded. "I understand." We didn't go back inside. We walked to the car together and drove home in silence. Not an angry silence this time, a heavy one, full of things we still needed to say, but weren't ready for yet. 3 weeks later, our daughter was born. We named her Nora. She came into the world screaming, which felt appropriate given everything her parents had been through. Tyler was in the delivery room. He held my hand. He cried when they placed her on my chest. For the first time in months, I saw the man I married. The weeks after Nora's birth were complicated. Beautiful, but complicated. Tyler was attentive. He changed diapers at 3 in the morning. He made bottles without being asked. He was present in a way he hadn't been for months. But trust doesn't rebuild overnight. Some mornings I'd wake up and look at him sleeping beside me and feel a rush of love so strong it hurt. Other mornings I'd look at him and feel the anger rise up again, sharp and bitter. We started therapy in December. Twice a week at first, then once a week. The therapist, Dr. Ashford, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't let either of us hide behind polite language. She made Tyler explain, in detail, every decision he'd made and why. She made me explain, in detail, every feeling I'd suppressed and why. It was brutal. Some sessions I left feeling lighter. Some sessions I left feeling worse. But we kept showing up. Tyler also started being transparent about the company. He showed me the auditor's full report. $342,000. Gone. Transferred over 24 months in amounts just small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts. Diana had been meticulous. She'd created fake vendor accounts and submitted phony invoices. She'd even forged Frank's signature on approval documents. The forensic accountant told us it was one of the most methodical cases of internal embezzlement he'd seen in a family business. Diana was formally charged in January. Embezzlement and fraud. 2 felony counts. She posted bail and moved to her sister's house in Savannah, the same sister whose failing hotel she'd been funneling money into. Frank filed for divorce the same week. I saw Diana one more time, about a month after the charges were filed. She showed up at our house unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon. I was home alone with Nora. Tyler was at work. I opened the door and there she was. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. Her hair was pulled back and she wasn't wearing makeup. "Can I come in?" she asked. Every instinct told me to close the door, but curiosity got the better of me. I led her into the kitchen. She didn't sit down. She stood near the counter, her arms crossed, her eyes darting around the room like she was cataloging everything. "I came to explain," she said. "Explain what?" "Why I did what I did." I leaned against the opposite counter. Nora was sleeping in the nursery. The baby monitor sat between us on the kitchen island, a soft green light pulsing with each of Nora's breaths. "Go ahead," I said. Diana took a breath. The hotel was Ellen's dream, my sister's dream. She put everything into it, her savings, her retirement. When it started failing, she came to me. She was desperate. She said she'd lose everything. "So you stole from your own family." I borrowed. "You stole, Diana. $342,000. You created fake vendors. You forged Frank's signature. That's not borrowing. That's embezzlement." Her face hardened. "You don't understand family loyalty. I'm standing in the house that your son and I bought together, raising your granddaughter, after you spent 6 months trying to push me out of my own marriage. Don't lecture me about family loyalty." She went quiet. For a long time, neither of us spoke. "I didn't come here to argue," she finally said. "I came to say I'm sorry. Are you sorry for stealing the money? Or are you sorry you got caught?" She didn't answer. That told me everything I needed to know. "I think you should go," I said. She looked toward the hallway, toward the nursery. "Can I see her? Just for a minute?" My hand went instinctively to the baby monitor. No. Diana's eyes filled with tears. Real ones or performed, I couldn't tell anymore. She nodded slowly, then walked out the front door without another word. I locked the door behind her. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Not because I felt sorry for her, because I felt sorry for the family she destroyed. For Frank, who built a company with his bare hands and watched his wife steal from it. For Tyler, who spent 6 months drowning in a secret that wasn't even his. For Nora, who would grow up with a grandmother she might never know. The criminal case moved slowly, the way these things do. Diana's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. Restitution plus probation, no jail time. The DA pushed back. Frank supported the prosecution fully. He wanted accountability, not just a check. In the end, Diana pleaded guilty to 1 count of embezzlement. She was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution. The judge noted in his remarks that the systematic nature of the fraud and the breach of family trust warranted significant consequences. I wasn't in the courtroom for the sentencing. Tyler went alone. When he came home that evening, he sat on the couch and stared at the wall for 20 minutes. I brought him a glass of water and sat beside him. "How do you feel?" I asked. He thought about it for a long time, relieved and sad, both at the same time. I understood that. I'd been living in that exact contradiction for months. Frank sold his share of the company 6 months later. He said he couldn't walk into that office anymore without seeing her handwriting on the fake invoices. Tyler took over as sole owner. It was a massive responsibility, but he threw himself into it. He hired a new CFO. He implemented proper financial controls. He rebuilt client trust 1 handshake at a time. And slowly, carefully, we rebuilt our marriage. It wasn't a straight line. There were setbacks, fights that erupted from nowhere. Nights when old resentment surfaced without warning. There was a stretch in March when I seriously considered leaving. Tyler had missed a therapy session without telling me, and the old fear came flooding back. Is he hiding something again? Is this happening all over? We had a fight that night that lasted 3 hours. Ugly words. Doors slamming. Nora crying in her crib while her parents fell apart in the hallway. But we came back to the table. We always came back to the table. Because the alternative was worse. Dr. Ashford told us something once that stuck with me. She said trust isn't a single thing you rebuild. It's 1,000 small things, done consistently over time. An answered phone call. A shared password. A conversation you don't want to have but have anyway. Trust is boring. Trust is showing up even when you'd rather not. Tyler showed up. Every day. He answered every question I asked, even the hard ones. He gave me access to every account, every email, every document related to the business. He texted me when he was running late. He told me when his mother called from prison, and he told me what she said. No filters, no editing, no protection I didn't ask for. And gradually, day by day, the man I married came back to me. Not the same man exactly. Quieter. More careful with his words. Quicker to check in. But still the man who handed me a book in a bookstores and smiled like the world was simple. Nora is 14 months old now. She has Tyler's eyes and my stubbornness. She took her first steps last week, right there on the porch, where I used to drink my coffee and wonder if my husband would ever come home to me again. Tyler was filming on his phone, and I was kneeling on the porch boards with my arms out. And she wobbled 3 steps toward me before falling into my chest, laughing. I looked up at Tyler. He was crying, again. He cries at everything these days. I used to tease him about it. Now I understand it. Those tears aren't weakness. They're gratitude. The kind you feel when you know how close you came to losing everything. People sometimes ask me if I regret staying. If I should have walked away that night at the reception when the truth came out. I understand why they ask. From the outside, it looks like I forgave too easily, like I let him off the hook. But here's what people don't see. I didn't forgive Tyler that night. I didn't forgive him that month or even that year. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a process. A slow, painful, sometimes infuriating process of watching someone prove, through action and consistency, that they were worth the risk. And the risk was real. Every day I stayed was a gamble. Every time I chose to trust him again, I was betting on a man who had already let me down once. But I also knew something most people didn't. Tyler hadn't lied to hurt me. He'd lied because he was drowning, and the person who should have thrown him a lifeline, his own mother, handed him an anchor instead. That doesn't excuse what he did. Nothing excuses shutting out the person you promised to share your life with. But it explains it. And sometimes, when you understand the why, you can find a path to the other side. Diana is still in prison as of today. She'll be eligible for release in 4 months. Tyler and I have already discussed it. She won't be welcome in our home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's a decision we'll make together when the time comes. Frank lives alone now in a small house near Lake Norman. He comes over every Sunday for dinner. He holds Nora on his lap and reads her picture books in funny voices. He's quieter than he used to be, but he laughs more. I think losing Diana broke something in him, but finding his granddaughter put something back. Last Sunday, as he was leaving, he stopped at the front door and turned back to me. "Thank you, Sophia." "For what?" "For staying. For giving my son a chance to be the man I raised him to be." I thought about that for a long time after he left. About chances. About second ones. About how easy it is to walk away and how hard it is to stay and fight for something when you're not sure it's worth fighting for. I'm still not sure, some days. Marriage is like that. You never get a guarantee. You just get a choice. Every single morning, to show up and try again. But I'll tell you this. On the night my mother-in-law stood up at my wedding reception and tried to burn my marriage to the ground, I learned something that changed me forever. The people who claim to protect you by keeping you in the dark aren't protecting you. They're protecting themselves. And the only way to build something real, something that can survive the worst night of your life, is to stand in the truth, even when it's ugly, even when it hurts, even when 200 people are watching. The truth didn't save my marriage that night. It nearly destroyed it. But it also gave us something the lies never could. A place to start over. And starting over, as it turns out, was exactly what we needed.